Labor Day is around the corner. The condo market is overflowing, yet we're still in a deep housing crisis. Interest rates are dropping, but are buyers sniffing a return to the market? I'm Sean Humphreys, joined by my co-hosts, Vaughan and Kristen Vetrano. This is Mortgage People. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Great intro.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let's jump right into it. I've got a story from this week that I think kind of shows the complexities of the market in the condo market in particular and pre-construction. I had a client this week that, we did their mortgage file. We put everything together. They qualify without too much problem. They're buying an investment property through pre-construction that they had purchased 4 years ago or agreed to purchase. And so now it's finally available and it's ready and it's closing in September. But as you guys know, property values in the condo market have declined. And what we're seeing is that the lower appraisals are coming out sometimes $100,000 less than what they agreed to purchase them for. And so I flagged this to my client. I said, I think that your $650,000 purchase price, the property's probably going to appraise somewhere around $550,000, which means that they're going to need to come up with another $80,000, $100,000 based on the lender only approving or only lending on the appraised value. And so kind of red flags. So I'm like, we're going to flag this. We're going to put together the file based on you guys qualifying for this amount and drawing some money from your line of credit that you can essentially be your own banker and fund the purchase that way rather than needing all the money from another lender. And so kind of that all worked out as well. It's a little tighter, but it worked. Have you guys come across that before? Have you been in this situation?
Yeah, I think that, it's not a new scenario. It happens. I saw it happen in a really bad way on like a $1.7 million town outside of the city, sort of. And it came in, I think, at time of purchase, it came in at 1.4, and that was a disaster, required private funds. I think you mentioned, banks are potentially allowing the purchase price as opposed to the appraised value. And I know that's a question of what's that going to look like long term. It certainly kicks the problem down the can. Kicks the can down the road.
Yeah. And that's what happened. They went to their building inspection and kind of the building inspector or the person that was there with them said, kind of whisper like, hey, we've got our lender that's partnered with the building and they're honoring the value of the property, or they're not offering the value, they're praising based on the purchase price. Mm-hmm. So they will lend maybe $80,000 to $100,000 more based on that purchase price rather than the actual appraised value of the property. Mm-hmm. And which is great for the buyer. They can immediately great for the buyer. They can purchase, they can get their mortgage. They don't have to consider other private options and great. But what I'm worried about is that they can't sell this property at any time, right? Because now they probably have more mortgage than what the property is actually worth. So they're underwater from the beginning. And if they're doing it for this client, then maybe they're doing it for other units within the building. So they've got a whole building with inflated property values, which I don't think is
around the 2008 banking crisis in the US when we get into situations like that. I don't suppose that it will get much bigger than that, within one building and closing dates surrounding that. But that's problematic. It's difficult because the appraisal is punitive in a way. And that we've never been in a market like this in Toronto specifically, where pre-construction is always overvalued at closing date. And part of it is probably, built on the pre-construction price, the square footage price, where they're trying to factor in future values And if future values aren't on that steep incline that we've seen in Toronto, then you have a problem like this. So it's probably pretty isolated, but in the meantime, it's scary.
I wonder if it's isolated. If they're going to do it for one building, why not? Like, what's so special about this building that this isn't becoming, a policy? And it sort of speaks to how confident they are in a resurgence of the market, because they wouldn't do it if they thought there's never going to be any equity in these properties.
For
So,
sure. I mean, isolated, like how many buildings do we have in the next, like, let's say 18 months that
mhm.
are actually closing? How many units in that building won't have the funding? That's sort of what I mean by isolated. I don't see it as a problem going forward. I think that all the property values will come back. Um,
Yeah, but how long, right?
Yeah.
So how long are they in this situation for? Because now, they're getting a mortgage with a higher interest rate than probably what they were thinking 4 years ago. So they're underwater on the value and the monthly payment. They're going to have to come up with more money every month for this property. Um, Certainly,
Long term, I bet my money on it that they're laughing.
sure,
Because
long
new
term, no,
construction is
for
not
sure.
going up. It may be 4 or 5 years of having to tighten the belt, but at the end of that, there should be tremendous value.
Yeah, because they can't refinance at any point. Like they're going to need for the property value to at least come up $100,000. I don't think that happened. Like prices on condos have been flat for 3 years, something like since before the pandemic. Essentially, we haven't seen any price increases. So, do we
Mhm.
see all of a sudden $100,000 more in price value in a year? I don't think so.
For
And
condos,
Especially
yeah.
on a refinance. I find every time I do a refinance, the appraisal always comes in like a little bit lighter than probably what market value is. I think that's like pretty standard in the appraisal business, because you don't have an actual purchase price to say, yeah, this was actually bought at this value, right? So they're looking around and seeing what the comps are. I think that you're right. They probably will not be able to refinance until they renew.
But also, can they even sell? Like, they kind of, um, I think this is going to be one of those things where it's like, we talked about all those renewals coming due, and what problems those were, or like when people talk about how defaults are now double. Somebody was asking me the other day, are so many people defaulting? And I'm like, it was an American family member that was asking me, and I was like, no, in Canada, there's kind of a lot of levers to ensure that people don't get in over their heads in a mass scale. But of course, there are going to be individuals who are really it's screwed, screwed by this. I was like trying to find a
It's a
better word.
technical mortgage
The
term for
best word
everybody
for it.
watching.
yeah,
Like if they're, or I don't know, end users or investors, if they find they can't hold on to it, but they don't have the money to sell, because if you've got to pay a realtor, you've got to pay whatever other kinds of fees
Legal
and
fees,
whatever
yeah.
is outstanding on the mortgage.
yeah.
And
Where's that money coming from?
yeah,
That's not the
Mm,
investment that they thought they were getting into,
yeah,
right?
there's
Like 4 or
things,
5 years ago,
Not
it
out
was
of the
all the
gate for
rage,
sure.
yeah,
all the
there's,
rage of like, oh, you're going to make so much money, property values are going to go up forever.
mm-hmm,
That's not the case, and
yeah,
misleading,
Ultimately, the
unfortunately.
public perception on this is going to hinder more development in the near future as well. Because right now, we're hearing even real estate agents say like pre-con is not the place to put your money. But if the money doesn't go into the pre-con, then the thing doesn't get built.
mm-hmm,
And we're
yeah,
we're battling this housing crisis. But now with situations like this, the public perception it will take a nosedive on
mm-hmm.
pre-construction.
Well, and
Well, I've got
also,
to go ahead, Kristen.
oh, I was just gonna say, like, we've been touting this message: get into the market as soon as you can, buy the most accessible thing, and then when that appreciates, you can take your nest egg and upgrade. But that dream, there's a term called, like, I don't know, it's like financial nihilism or homeownership nihilism or something, and it's like people, maybe our age or younger, are just giving up on the idea of ever getting into the market, because they're like, the getting into the market and then using that to upgrade is now a dream that is gone. And then also the affordability is a dream that is gone for many people. So this is a time of transition like I have never seen. And for a while there was a feeling of like, we'll just hold on. We're getting through the worst. And it really does feel like we are now coming out of the worst of it. But to see what will come, what changes are coming, it's going to be really interesting and not painless, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is like long-term residual effects of what we, sort of a man-made problem, not the virus itself, but the stalling of the economy. We did that, and now, we're seeing that there's big-time problems coming on the other end of it. But, so maybe it's a 15-year resolution. In the immediate, like, things will be okay. Hopefully your clients will put it all together and they'll get a decent rent for their property. So that they can, nobody's going to be cash flow positive right now, but not too far, not too deep in the hole. But I think that, so it probably will stall new construction. I think Benjamin Tall spoke on that when we were at the mortgage conference, that they're not going to be building more condos. So it's going to create over demand probably in 5 years. So 5 years may be miserable until they get to the end of the term, or maybe you put them in a 3-year term. After that, they're probably laughing because the values will probably stay relatively stable, and then they're going to shoot up because the supply is not coming.
You might be right.
Okay, well, let's do an approve or decline. I know we've kind of skirted around our opinions, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts on it. So first question, would you buy a pre-construction condo today knowing that market values aren't being supported? And keep in mind that your property may not be ready for 4 or 5 years. Approve or decline?
Oh, sorry. Who's going first?
Go ahead, Kristen.
I conditionally approve. If it depends. I mean, it always depends. It depends on how much extra money you've got to play with, how susceptible you are to risk. I think if you are an end user who is going to need a place to live, that's not going to be the route for you probably. But if you're an investor or you're buying a larger property, maybe chances are things are going to look a lot different in 4 years. Like Vaughan said, the market might be, really unstable, and maybe there's, too many people trying to buy too few condos because not enough have been built. So approve conditionally.
Vaughan, what do you got?
I'm bullish on it. Certainly you need to make sure that you have the finances and do your calculations for the future in case you come up against a scenario like this. But we're constantly in an inventory shortage. If you can get your hands on inventory now and you don't have to start paying mortgage payments on it now, hopefully, over the next 3 to 5 years as it gets built, your financial situation gets even better. And then you're going to have something that people are really going to want. So yeah, approve this one all the way.
I'm going to decline. I think that I'd rather put my money into something else today. Not that I don't think it would be a good investment 4 or 5 years down the road, or that it would end up being a profitable thing. I'd rather put my money to work for me today. And I think locking up money in a pre-construction that wouldn't necessarily reap a dividend for 4 or 5 years, I think that's too long of a road. I'd rather take my 20% down and put that into another investment that's going to start making money right away, or purchase another property that I can rent out right away. If I've got that money, there's plenty of properties for sale right now because investors are getting out of the market. I think the smart investment is something built right now, might be brand new. So another investor has already taken the risk of putting the money down, and I'm getting it at a discount. So I'm going to decline, not for it being a bad idea, but just I think that there's better ideas, better ways to spend my money.
And I'd also put my money on 4 or 5 years, we're going to see bottom barrel interest rates again. So the cost to carry that property in a few years may be very favorable, whereas the cost right now is still kind of on the high end for what we're used to over the last, decade or almost 20 years.
All right, I got another one for you guys. And Vaughn, I'll get your feedback first. With an oversupply of condos in the market and still a housing crisis, should builders continue focusing on building one bedroom units?
That's a tricky one. I don't wear
I love it.
builders.
I love this
I don't
question.
wear builders pants. I don't have a hard hat.
Put them on for a sec. See how they feel.
I think that probably not. I don't know what goes into a city plan, or how you get approved on what you're building. I think that the demand in the future for this city will be, multiple unit, because we don't have a whole lot of, like, let's say, like a 3-bedroom condo in the city at all. I think that something like that moving forward will be tremendously valuable. I just not quite sure how you pre-sell units that big based on the price per square foot. So yeah, let's say decline that. I don't think that 1-bedroom or studio style apartments or condos are gonna hold the same value.
Kristen, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm all for decline. I think we need more density, and we need to be realistic about who is going to live in these places. And it's not all young, hot shit, salaried single people. It's like, it's combinations, it's families, it's couples. People need to cohabitate. It's not just a bunch of single people. And I think we all know that builders built those condos for investors who bought them, not caring really if they're not caring who's going to end up living there, except that they're a reliable source of rent. But as we know now, it seems like it's becoming clear that this is not it's not an investor friendly time, and maybe that was never ideally the case. And so I absolutely decline sticking to the 1-bedroom studios. I want to see, affordable. I don't know how they do that, of course, but like, subsidized or whatever, affordable 2 and 3-bedroom homes, because they do build them. They're just over $1 million. They're really, really expensive. They're luxury. They're absolutely only luxury.
And the strata fees are typically way up there, in the $2,000 a month sort of range for those.
It has to be realistic. Units. It's like, yeah.
Also, I think that we may see some international student reform, as it's how it ties into immigration and our population density increasing. It seems like there's sort of whispers of that. So that would make those units less desirable if we have less international students for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to decline as well. I think that single condo units, I think, were great because they're profitable for builders. They don't cost as much. The number of units you can sell in that square footage is better, so you get more. They're easier to sell because you've got all the mom and pop investors purchasing them, so you get your pre-construction targeted the way. I think it's 70% of the building needs to be sold before they can start building, so it was easy. But I think we've removed a whole bunch of investors and future mom and pop investors from that pool. I don't see them purchasing those units. And I think if builders are in the business of building new units, they need to focus on things that families or young couples will be able to expand into living into. Mm-hmm. I think I would live in a condo. I would live in a bigger unit condo, but as you said, I don't want to pay them $2,000 maintenance fees, and I don't want to live in a shoebox. I want something a little bit bigger, but I don't need to live in a house. It's just what works for my lifestyle right now in terms of the amenities that are available. Also the cost per square foot of a condo is like worse when it comes to the comparison between a semi-detached and a condo, like the equation just doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to decline. I think that they shift and they start building 2-3 bedroom condos just out of necessity, that they're builders and they need to build, things that people are going to start buying.
Yeah.
Hear
Increase
that? Hear
the
that, builders?
townhouses. More
Yeah.
townhouses. The townhouses seem to have always had like a little bit of a unfavorable reputation amongst buyers. I'm not quite sure why, but typically the condo fees are lower.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little bit more space. I think it's a practical solution for Toronto if you can find the space to build.
Yeah, there's
I
that
agree.
missing middle that you hear about, and it's the density and it's how everything is zoned. And if you drive through Montreal or New York and you see all these beautiful 3-story walk-ups, that's obviously not going to be in vogue for long because it's not accessible. Like truly, it's not. That is also not a realistic plan for populations that have strollers, that have disabilities, that have whatever. It's like really only a matter of time before anyone can't do groceries up 3 flights of stairs or whatever. But that type of
That's what
build.
we have robots for.
Well, I mean, once we have the robots, everything's going to be fine.
I mean, that's always a concern with the townhouse, right? And I had a townhouse a while ago, and it had something like 4 flights of stairs.
Mm-hmm.
You say the resale is limited to younger people because,
Yep.
Forward thinking people, 40 years old or 50 years old, and you're thinking, well, eventually my knees aren't going to really enjoy this journey up to bed every night,
Mm-hmm.
or down the stairs in the morning. So it's sort of thinking about the situation again in almost the wrong way of like, I need a place to live instead of I need an investment to resell to get rich off of. Happy that property values continue to improve, but also, we shouldn't be looking at it like it's just a strict money maker. You need to live somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, another one for you guys. This is a bit of a longer one. I'll let you guys decide who's going to respond first. So the free market has struggled to build housing, and end users actually want to buy. So that end users actually want to buy. We're seeing a surplus of 1-bedroom condos in Toronto, kind of a continuation of our first one. Yet we're still somehow in a housing crisis. In the past, the government of Canada has built social housing, but those programs were cut due to overspending and a growing deficit. This is back in the 90s. And so should the government invest in more social housing now? Is it worth higher taxes if it means keeping property values in check, lowering the cost of living, and increasing affordability? Imagine a Canada where housing is affordable. Approve or decline?
Can you imagine declining an affordable Canada? What kind?
Well, take that part out. Should the government of Canada raise taxes to build more housing, more social housing?
I mean, that I'm going to approve that.
I know. This is why I love this question.
We would not.
I can see Vaughan just.
The smoke's already coming out of my ears.
What kind of Canada would we have now if they hadn't cut that? It's no secret I'm really interested in the gap between rich and poor and rich and medium, and what even is happening to America.
I'm just going to throw something else in there while Kristen comes back to us. But my grandparents in the 50s had to moved out to the middle of nowhere, which was Agincourt at the time. And because there was a housing crisis in Toronto, like it's a similar type of idea. Like all these veterans came back and now they've got nowhere to live. They built a whole bunch of housing at that time, but still there wasn't enough. And people were moving out to the middle of nowhere in Agincourt and like living, in a much.
No shade to Agincourt.
Agincourt's like central Toronto now, right? Like central GTA. But at that time, it was out in the boonies. Like it was in the middle of nowhere. They had like an acre and a half of property and like a stream in the back. Like you picture like, really, really rural. And but that was the only option they had. They were renting like a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 kids in it, and a 5th on the way. Anyway, Kristen, you were saying before you kind of went sideways on your internet connection.
Was
what's
that
your
me? It looked like all of it. I
No,
thought
that
it
was you.
all of us. It's just me. Sorry. Okay. Well, thanks for that meandering story that I heard all of. Yeah, I'm approve. I think like we're never not going to be in a increasingly insane deficit. Like I just think what's more money that the government can spend? I just think like there's always money in the banana stand. Build more houses.
Oh boy. We all
love this
saw
question.
Rachel Gunn breakdance at the Olympics, right?
Ray gun.
Don't cyberbully.
All I'm going to say is that's the best that our government could do to solve the housing crisis. If you thought that that was a good dance, that's as good as it could possibly get for this
Because
government.
that was government funded? Is that what you're saying? This is a government funded breakdancer?
But also, which government? You know, like our federal government that's involved in, you know, half a dozen scandals over the last 7 years, including paying 2 guys $100 million to build a vaccine passport app in their mom's basement. Do we want to give that government the resources to squander it? I mean, I think that if we did, you know, if we gave the current government $50 billion to build houses, they'd probably spend it on traveling around the world to see what houses look like in other countries. Now, would we give it to the provincial government? Do we want that gangster or provincial government to give that money to his friends to build mansions so that they can sell it at a discount price to their other gangster friends? I don't think so. Now, I did a little bit of research into this, and I said, are there any countries in the world that actually have been able to build housing successfully? And turns out Japan, if this article is correct, Japan is actually quite good at it. And the speculation for the reason why is less zoning. So if we have, you know, federal, provincial, municipal zoning, it's too many instances where one party could say no. And what typically happens in Canada is at the municipal level, they don't want more housing, right? So if you think they go into a community with lots of space, they poll the neighbors, should we build more housing here? They said, no, we bought this because we wanted all this space. So it gets held up at too many different points. And with that said, how are we going to address that problem before we get to the housing problem? I don't know. This is the decline for me all the way, Sean.
You know what, though? You can decline the government spending. You can decline it, but like what your problem is not government building housing. Your problem is government corruption. That
right.
is like,
could this government be responsible? I just don't think so.
I'll ask you something.
Could a government be responsible? Maybe.
Is any government that is made of electable politicians going to be responsible with money? Any politician who seems to be able to get themselves elected and form government, did they do so by not being corrupt? Did they do so by telling the truth all over the place? Like, likely not. So we just have to do your best. Build the houses if you can.
Yeah, I just don't think that. I think that we could shove all the money in the world at it, and what we would get is a giant bloated team of consultants and nothing built. They'd invest all the money into flying around the world. So this is what a house looks like in Norway. Isn't that nice? Well, let's go over to Japan and let's hire some consultants to come with us and take a look and interview their government. You know, I just think that the money would be gone and we get nothing for it.
I'm going to I love this question because I think that and purposely teed it up for you guys, but I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that I do want to believe that we could spend. I think it's been successful in the past. We have had social housing that is built. I don't know how much that costs. I don't know how much could it have been done more efficiently by the free market. I don't know that, but we have the housing now, and we have social housing that people are living in my neighborhood, and I'm sure in many neighborhoods in the GTA. And that continues to pay dividends over generations. And having that housing built at today's cost in 20 years from now will seem like peanuts, regardless of what it costs and how efficient it was. The free market is incentivized to build things that people will buy quickly. One bedroom units were all the rage for 2 decades. But is that what we need going forward? No. So I think that we can purchase it. I think there would be corruption. I think we would spend too much on consultants. But the end of it is housing that last generations that will be continue to pay dividends regardless of the waste and the cost that it comes out of it. And I think we just need more of a focus, like Japan had, on building that. Can we eliminate some zoning? I'm for that. I think that we need to just do it now. But with that comes like the Ford government, for example, building over marshes in Pickering, on the Pickering Ajax border. Like, it's just those things where, like, why are we building it here? But it's built. Like, can we get things built? What are the consequences that we can live with? What's the cost we can live with? The result being more affordable housing for everybody.
Yeah, I think instead of also maybe the federal government building the housing physically, it's more of an like subsidizing investors building more spacious units with closets and whatever else, like more bedrooms, etc. So like, because the problem with builders is they can't make enough profit to satisfy them, right, to build those sized units. So if they were subsidized, clearly the price for consumers would be lower.
Or they maybe just an agreement beforehand that they will buy a certain percentage of those if they go unsold. Like those 2-3 bedroom units get purchased by, gets built, but hey, we're going to top up whatever units you're not selling in pre-construction. We're going to give you a pass because we get those built. If it happens to, like, we're going to get you to 70% units sold, but we want certain number of those as 2-3 unit properties, units, then let's top up those and we'll get you to continue on. And then you can sell them at the end when everything's built, and then people know what they're purchasing.
You could move me to a conditional approve, but we need at least.
I love it. I love it.
We would need at least a 5% improvement in our government system overall for me to consider that. Like, I think it has been done in the past. We built wartime housing. A lot of it is still around today. Those are the little sort of postage stamp properties that have been now renovated into big mansions in North York. So I look, there's potential. But we have to change the political dynamic that we're in right now in order for me to think that the government is capable of anything, beyond tying their own shoelaces.
Ouch. That seems like a good segue we're 33 minutes in.
Well, I've got one more, but we can save this one for any other time. It's kind of off topic.
Let's save it.
Save
Let's make material for next time. Keep them wanting more. Leave them wanting more.
Yeah, it's about the stress test. So I'm just going to tease that for the next time. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks. As always, we're mortgage people, and hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did like it, press the like button. If you loved it, press the subscribe button, and we'd love to hear you joining us next time. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.